So I want to change gears for at least a little bit to talk about big picture, because obviously you've traveled quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to talk about like differences in culture and your experiences with Germany, United States, India, and some of your experiences with all three. So off the rip, what were the most shocking or interesting or fascinating differences between, like, let's just say Germany, US, or Europe in general, United States, India, and your experiences with all three?
My first time outside India was in Bali, in
Okay.
Indonesia. And that was a nice like primer because it had that Eastern culture influence. But there was still that shock of, oh, people actually wait for you to cross the road if they're driving a car. I was like, what? Insane. So I was already ready for that in America.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the first time. And I spent most of my time in the Bay Area,
Mhm.
Northern California. And it was scary because, anybody could have a gun. for us, like, and the family that I was
For
visiting
non-Americans,
there,
it's like intimidating.
and there was so much going on. Every parking lot had like a crackhead who was like throwing slurs at us, and I was like, ooh, and you feel scared to retort. Even if they say the worst thing,
Yeah.
like, I don't want to see what he has in his pocket.
Thanks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
My cousin, one of my cousins is studying medicine in Portland, and she was also there in that time. And she said, a lot of people are going to be angry at you on the streets, and a lot of people are going to show you the middle finger. And no matter what, just control yourself. And at most, you just give them the thumbs down. Just disappointed, not angry. And I was like, okay, fine. But so California was that way. Oregon was much nicer, much nicer. I spent some time in Portland. There is a big homeless problem, but otherwise, better than California. I enjoyed the time there more.
Yeah. The streets in Cali have gotten pretty bad over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and switching on the news every day there's a shooting.
Yeah.
In India, we just hear about it if like an Indian gets shot or something like that. It's big news. And I thought, okay, once every few months or whatever. But every single day there was a shooting in New York and in Detroit. And it was so scary to like...
Yeah, I mean, from an American's perspective, the gun violence is like, oh, it's only in these areas of these towns. Like, like from the average American, I mean, the average American, at least in the Midwest especially, would never really think about guns.
Yeah.
But obviously, like in Texas or stuff like that, it's much more prominent because like open carry is allowed and things like that.
Mhm.
Or on the, in the big cities, then you have the gun violence and the gang violence and things like that are happening. And then beside that, it's mostly like the mass shootings that get the huge amount of press, which obviously then for everyone becomes like, wow, like that can happen in small towns, and that's where it gets crazy.
Yeah.
But obviously America's a huge place, so inherently the average American's just like, meh. And then, but obviously it's not an issue that should be that like, whatever.
Yeah.
But like
going from like India, where
like what's a prominent issue in India that like feel like is there something
this bad? Well, there are big problems. There's like the caste issue, and people are really struggling a lot. There's a lack of LGBT recognition from the government. They have legalized, gay sex and things like that. That happened a while ago, I think 2016. But still in administration, people like a gay couple can't adopt a child and things like that. So it's a slow process, but there's the caste issue is really big. I think if you ask me what's the big problem in India, I would say caste first.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people deny that, no, it doesn't happen anymore. It's a thing. Caste is a thing.
How do you think it shows itself nowadays?
Oh, simplest thing. If someone from an oppressed community comes to the city, comes to Bangalore, and tries to rent a house, and if the landlord is like a Brahmin or someone on the high caste or so-called high caste, they will just ask you for your name, and if by the name you can recognize usually which caste you're in. Or yeah, absolutely. And a lot of caste-based things are usually based on like, if you're a Brahmin, then you typically are a vegetarian. So if you are faced with a potential tenant to your house, and you ask them, do you eat meat? And they say, yeah, no house for you, or something like this.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Or I've heard stories where just based on their last name, they were denied, you're not allowed to rent my room, and things like that. In colleges, in academia, where people are just mistreated in the classroom, in the way that professors grade you and the way you're treated. Not just in rural areas, in the city and everywhere. There are stories popping up all the time. There's a lot of Dalit writers bringing out their stories these days, trying to raise awareness that caste is still an issue. So there's a lot of that. In more rural areas, it's very violent. People are still denying people access to water, or there's like lynches and things like that.
Wow.
People beat people up just for looking at someone or sharing the same space as somebody else's. It is really ugly. It gets really nasty.
What do you think is the solution to that, or how does it change? Will it get this time fix it, or do you think there's a
the
bigger
government
issue?
has provided reservations for people from castes that are treated badly, and now there's a whole right-wing thing that says take away the reservation. Why do you want that? There is the movement. With time, the awareness that caste violence is still a thing is getting better, I would say, because a lot of traditional families would say, no, it's a thing of the past. But with how much writers, and we were speaking about the role of music in literature, how much work they're doing now, giving talks, writing books, sharing their stories. Even the most conservative or traditional people are getting exposed to the fact that, this is still real in the cities where we're supposed to be super modern or whatever.
Yeah.
It is changing. It's not a very static field. But yeah, time you can never predict. Is it better or worse?
That's fascinating. I mean, it does sound a lot like, a lot of the racial issues that are facing the United States when it comes to because the average middle class American in the Midwest doesn't see racism. They don't feel the racism because it just doesn't affect their lives.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's not racism, we had a black president, how is there any racism? And I even think for me, growing up in Nebraska, dead center of the United States. I grew up I had, black friends or, minority friends. And I just never thought of it. I growing up because there's not racism.
You wouldn't imagine. If someone asked you, you would have said no.
I'm like, racism, and then as I got older though, into high school and later, especially into college, I'm like, it's maybe it's not as prominent in the exact specific city I grew up in, but across the United States, there's still insane amount of racism.
Yeah, and I feel like oppression just finds the legal way to still keep happening.
Yeah.
Okay, you have abolitionists, and that whole phase of America is over. When there's no slaves, but black people are still having a bad time.
Especially in the South. The South is where it still is imminent for sure. And that makes a lot of sense. It just depends. And obviously anywhere people still face it. It's hard to just say, only in the South there's racism, because that just completely minimizes it.
For real. I got called a bunch of slurs by people when I was running around in California.
Yeah, wow, that's just so mind blowing to me.
Yeah, even downtown San Francisco, I was getting,
from the homeless people, or from who?
Some of them were homeless, sure, but they were usually more friendly because they were trying to ask me for stuff.
naturally. Yeah.
But sometimes there would just be these guys, you could tell they were on fentanyl or on something, right? Something really bad, and they're just walking down the street and yelling and yelling. Wow. And when they see me or my family, that's when the slurs come out, because if they're just, San Francisco is pretty diverse as it is. But it's usually these white guys completely high off their mind.
Yeah.
I didn't even know these slurs existed until I heard it from them. I was like, what? They have a name for okay.
Oh no, Google that. Oh no.
And
that's great. Have you experienced any racism here in Europe?
I haven't.
Really?
I've had such a good time in Germany. Such a good time.
Well, that's great.
And you'd think I live in a very, very white suburb.
in the forest.
In the forest, in the woods. Where every family is just white and everybody is just German, right? A pretty remote place. but everybody is super nice. I've been to the foreigners office a bunch of times for all the formalities and stuff.
Yeah.
They can tell. I've been told in India, this is what I got used to hearing when I told people I'm going to Germany. They're like, "Oh, you know German though? Are you ready? You're going to have such a bad time." When I was in California, I visited friends of my family. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're these super rich Indians who are in San Francisco because of IT. So they have a huge house in the suburbs in like Fremont, 3 children, 2 dogs, kind of very typical American dream. Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
2 cars, but they're an Indian family. And I was talking to the parents. They were asking me, "Oh, so what are you going to do? You've graduated. You've been doing music. What are you going to do now?" I said, "Well, I got into college in Germany, and I plan to go to Germany." And the dad was like, "Why Germany?" And he was so concerned. I was like, "What's wrong with Germany?" I said, "It seems nice. The college is good. Expanded media seems really, really nice.
Yeah.
And I have the portfolio. I want the skills.
Yeah.
College is free. It's public.
It's
Why not?"
Yeah, I know.
And he says, "Well, we went on vacation to Germany, and everybody was so mean, and they were so curt with us." I was like, "What conversations did you have?" They were like, "We were at the train station. The train was late, and nobody told us. Nobody told us that the train was late. We had to look at
I mean, that does sound pretty German.
the train is always late in
Yeah.
Germany. Just look at the signs, dude. Look at they have LED screens. It's not that
Yeah.
bad. And one of their problems was the roads are too small, too narrow to drive in.
So they love America. That's what I'm getting here.
This is where that's going.
Yeah.
These are these Indian, who probably
They want
Nick-
some massive roads. They want nice people who will just talk
who
to
will
you
just say
out of the blue.
hello, good
Yeah.
morning every time you pass them by.
Yeah. That's a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
Getting to Germany, no one says hi to you, which for me was like weird.
You might-
but I expected it, you know.
It's true in maybe Dieburg and Darmstadt, but if you lived in the sticks like I do, you would still have
that's
that.
nice.
You would still have that. Everybody is walking their dog and pushing a pram, and everybody's saying hello.
Oh, okay.
So I guess it's just where you are.
Interesting.
If you're a tourist and you're looking like a tourist, I
Yeah.
don't think many people will be, the California level of friendliness with you, the California suburb level.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, just in general. Yeah.
And they had such a gripe with Germany, and these were the only reasons they could give. And they were like, if you're going to Europe, you might as well go to Oxford or Cambridge. That kind of mentality.
I mean, that makes sense.
Go to the number 1 college.
Yeah.
Get a super fancy job. Otherwise, what you're doing with your life? I was faced with a lot of that from my Indian.
I bet.
Yeah, like, what is Darmstadt? I've never heard of this. Why? Do you know German? It always comes back to that. But
It does.
my experience here has been amazing. Everybody I've met, you'd think I've spent almost 6 months here now. Not one like unpleasant encounter with strangers, with like cashiers or office workers. Even I talked to like Chanda and other people from our class in Darmstadt. They say the bus drivers are mean to them, and the foreigners office counter people are rude and very curt and things like that. And I do believe them. It does happen, but maybe I was just very lucky. Everybody was so sweet to me so far. And at this point, if someone is mean to me, it's just like a statistics thing, right?
Yeah.
You spend enough time, you'll find.
Eventually, you'll find someone. Yeah.
So I do.
Inevitably.
Germany has been much nicer than USA.